Rebuttal is definitely the most fun part of debating, and it's the thing that I definitely enjoyed the most about debating. So rebuttal's your opportunity to prove why what the other team is saying isn't true or why it doesn't make their case more persuasive. All team members should be playing a really important role in rebuttal, and it's important that as a first or second speaker, that just because you might have sat down and finished your speech, that you're still listening to the debate and writing down rebuttal and passing it up to the later speakers. And it's also the role of the fourth speaker to make sure that they're tracking the debate and seeing what arguments have come up in the debate and writing rebuttal for other speakers to present.
Rebuttal is a critical part of your case because it's the time that you spend deconstructing the other team's arguments. Although it's really important to spend lots of time on your own arguments, it's important also to give an equal amount of time considering what the other team is saying and proving to the adjudicator and the audience why your case is more persuasive. When rebutting the other team's arguments, it's really important to always attack their strongest points first. A lot of teams tend to go for quantity over quality. And although there might be lots of little small points the other team mentioned, it's important to go after the really big points that you found the most convincing in the debate and attack those points first.
Sometimes students get a little bit flustered and they'll get their team name confused, or they'll get a date wrong or a person wrong. And what really annoys me as an adjudicator is teams that'll stand up and nitpick through someone's case in order to kind of make them feel bad. And I think that as an adjudicator, it's really important to get this message out there. Your only job in rebuttal is to concentrate on the really big, persuasive and good arguments that have been put forward by your opposition. You can leave the rest of the stuff alone.
When rebutting a model, it's really important to not just consider whether or not the model is actually going to work, but to engage on whether or not the model is going to be beneficial to society. While there may be a whole bunch of practical reasons why their model might not work as effectively, it's important to focus on whether or not the model overall would be a good or bad thing. As an example, in a debate on whether or not we should introduce laptops in all schools, teams often get too focused on whether laptops will cost too much, or whether they'll get damaged, or whether they'll be hard to carry, when it's more important to focus on the bigger issue, like will laptops be good for learning for students?
A great framework for when you're thinking of your rebuttal is to decide whether your contention with the opposition's case is on a factual level, a logical level, or on an alternative level. A factual contention is when you don't believe that what the opposition has said is actually true, and this might be something about their example or the facts that they've used within their case. A logical contention is when what the opposition is saying doesn't make sense and doesn't support their case, and this can be based on a group of fallacies that you can explore more. For example, one logical fallacy is the slippery slope argument, and this is when teams try to explain that something dramatic is going to happen as a consequence of one small action. Ad hominem is another example of a logical fallacy, and it's when debaters, rather than trying to attack the argument itself and explain why that might be wrong, instead attack the speaker and say that they didn't present it well or they don't know what they're speaking about, and this isn't an effective type of rebuttal. Another example of a logical fallacy is a straw man attack, and this is where teams, rather than interpreting the opposition's case at its best, try to interpret it in a way that suits their own case. And they go through and they try and rebut this, not on what the opposition said, but on the way that this point suits their own team's case. Another type of rebuttal that can be used is an alternative contention, and this often comes in the form of an even if response, where as a team you accept that even if what the opposition was saying was true, there'd still probably be a better alternative for how something should be carried out. My top tip about rebuttal is to make sure that you get down the other team's allocation, because that's going to give you a complete cheat sheet about what the other team's talked about and give you a list of points that you need to make sure that your team has totally rebutted and proved wrong.
My tip for rebuttal is to try and be comparative between the other team's arguments and your own arguments. This is because although it's important to prove the other team wrong, it's also important to show why on the balance your team's case is actually more convincing or provides more benefits to the audience than the other team's case.